I never expected a letter from my dead father to change everything. But there it was, sitting in my grandmother's attic, tucked away in a dusty metal lockbox I'd been avoiding for months. My name is Avery, and until yesterday, I thought I knew exactly who I was, just another marketing professional trying to make it in Chicago. Raised by my grandparents after my mother decided her dreams were bigger than raising a kid. Pretty standard stuff, really. But that letter changed everything. Found this while cleaning out Dad's old things, my grandmother Rose said, handing me the lockbox. He wanted you to have it when you turned 28. I remember staring at that box, my hands trembling slightly as I worked the key into the lock. Inside, beneath a stack of old photographs and what looked like investment papers, was an envelope with my name written in my father's familiar scrawl. My dearest Avery, the letter began. If you're reading this, I'm no longer here, but there's something you need to know. I've set aside a trust fund for your education, enough to put you through any college you choose, plus some extra to help you start your life. Your mother Linda knows about this money. She promised to make sure you got it when the time came. The room started spinning. College money? I'd worked 3 jobs through university, taken out massive student loans that I was still paying off. My mother had always claimed there was nothing left after Dad died. There should be close to $500,000, the letter continued. I know it won't make up for me not being there, but I wanted to make sure you had every opportunity. Rose, I called out, my voice cracking. Did you know about this? My grandmother's face fell as she read the letter. Oh, sweetheart. No. I had no idea Michael had set this up. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking as I scrolled through my mother's latest Instagram posts. There she was, lounging on a beach in Bali with her new fiance Ryan, a guy barely 10 years older than me. The diamond ring on her finger glinted in the sunset, probably worth more than my yearly salary. She's been living off my college fund, I whispered, the realization hitting me like a punch to the gut. All those exotic vacations, the designer clothes, that condo in the Gold Coast. That was my future she was spending. Rose sat beside me, her hand warm on my shoulder. Linda. She's always been good at justifying things to herself. But this. She shook her head, looking more disappointed than angry. I thought about all those nights I'd spent working late shifts at the campus coffee shop, the scholarships I'd fought for, the loans I'd accepted because I had no other choice. All while my mother was living it up with money that was meant for me. My phone buzzed, speaking of the devil. A text from Linda, sweetie. Ryan and I just booked our wedding venue. The Four Seasons. Can you believe it? We need to talk about your bridesmaid dress. I stared at the message, feeling something shift inside me. The hurt was still there, but now it was crystallizing into something harder, something that demanded action. I need to know everything, I told Rose, carefully folding my father's letter. Every account, every transaction, every lie she's told since Dad died. Rose nodded slowly, understanding in her eyes. Your grandfather kept copies of all Michael's financial records in his study. We can start there. As I followed her downstairs, I thought about my half-brother Ethan, Linda's son from her second marriage. He was 16 now, probably having no idea about any of this. I wondered if she was stealing from him too. One thing was certain, my mother was about to learn that some debts can't be paid off with someone else's money. And I was finally ready to collect. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I spent hours going through my grandfather's meticulously organized files, piecing together the trail of my father's money. By morning, I had enough bank statements and legal documents to make my blood boil. The Four Seasons hotel lobby felt too bright, too pristine as I waited for my mother. She'd suggested meeting here to discuss wedding plans, completely oblivious to what was coming. I watched her stride in, designer handbag swinging, looking exactly like her Instagram photos, perfectly coiffed, expensive highlights. Not a wrinkle in sight thanks to whatever procedures she'd treated herself to with my money. Darling. She air-kissed both my cheeks, her diamond ring catching the light. You look tired. Are you sleeping enough? I've been doing some interesting reading, I said, sliding the folder across the table. About Dad's trust fund. The change in her expression was subtle, a slight tightening around her eyes, a barely noticeable pause before she reached for her water glass. Oh, sweetie, not this again. We've been through this. Your father left barely enough to cover the funeral expenses. Funny how there was enough for your trip to the Maldives last year. I pulled out a bank statement. Or that penthouse you bought in 2018. The one you sold for double the price 6 months later. Those were investments, Avery. Smart financial decisions that you made with money that wasn't yours. My voice stayed steady, even as my hands shook under the table. Dad left that money for my education. You were just the trustee. Linda's perfectly maintained facade cracked slightly. You don't understand what it was like after your father died. I was alone, barely 30, with a child to raise. Which you didn't do, I cut in. Grandmother and grandfather raised me while you were off, finding yourself in Europe. I needed time to heal. Her voice rose slightly, drawing glances from nearby tables. She lowered it again, leaning forward. Besides, look how well you turned out. You're strong, independent. You didn't need that money handed to you on a silver platter. I almost laughed at the irony. No, you needed it handed to you instead. Tell me, does Ryan know about any of this? That hit home. Linda's face paled slightly. Leave Ryan out of this. He has nothing to do with. With what? The fact that you stole from your own daughter? That you're planning this ridiculous wedding with money that should have paid for my college education? Keep your voice down, she hissed, glancing around nervously. What do you want from me, Avery? Money? Is that it? Fine, I'll write you a check. I want you to tell the truth. To Ryan, to Ethan, to everyone. About who you really are. Linda's laugh was brittle. Or what? You'll cause a scene. Ruin my wedding? Think carefully about this, sweetheart. You're not the only one who can dig up the past. The threat in her voice was clear, but instead of fear, I felt a strange calm settle over me. What could you possibly have on me, Mom? I'm not the one who abandoned my child. I'm not the one who stole $500,000. I did what I had to do to survive, she said, gathering her things. You'll understand when you're older. When you have children of your own. As she stood to leave, I called after her. I'm giving you 1 week, Mom. Tell them yourself, or I will. And I have copies of everything. She paused, her back to me. You know, you sound just like your father right now. Always so righteous, so sure of everything being black and white. She turned, and for a moment, I saw something vulnerable in her eyes. Life isn't that simple, Avery. After she left, I sat there for a long time, staring at my reflection in the window. I looked tired, yes, but there was something else there too, a determination I'd inherited from my father. A strength I'd learned from my grandparents. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hey sis, it's Ethan. Can we talk? Mom's acting weird, and I found some strange papers in her office. I smiled grimly. Looks like I wasn't the only one starting to ask questions. Meeting Ethan at the local coffee shop felt surreal. My half-brother looked nothing like the photos Linda posted on social media, no carefully curated poses or designer clothes. Just a lanky teenager in a worn hoodie, nervously shredding a paper napkin. I found these in Mom's home office, he said, sliding a manila envelope across the table. I was looking for my birth certificate for my driver's license application, and inside were more bank statements, but these were different from the ones I'd found. These showed regular transfers from what appeared to be Ethan's college fund into Linda's personal account. She's doing it to you too, I whispered, my coffee growing cold and forgotten. Ethan nodded, his eyes fixed on the table. My dad, before the divorce, he set up accounts for me. Mom was supposed to be managing them until I turned 18. The familiar anger bubbled up, but now it wasn't just for me. How did you find out about me? About what happened with my father's trust? I overheard Mom arguing with Ryan last night. She was pretty worked up about your meeting. He finally looked up, and I saw my own hurt reflected in his eyes. Is it true? Did she really abandon you when you were little? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from Ryan: "We need to talk. Linda's not telling me the whole story. Can you meet?" "Looks like your mom's perfect engagement is starting to crack," I said, showing Ethan the message. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so similar to our mother's it made my chest tight. "She's been acting crazy since you confronted her. Yesterday, I caught her looking up houses in Europe online. Ryan has no idea, but I think she's planning to run," I finished. "Just like she did when I was young." The realization hit me hard. She's going to try to disappear with whatever money she has left. "What do we do?" Ethan asked, suddenly looking younger than his 16 years. The memory hit me unexpectedly, sitting at our old kitchen table while my father helped me with homework. His voice gentle as he explained complex math problems. "Education is your future, Avery," he'd said. "No one can take that away from you." But someone had. And now she was about to do it again. "First," I said, pulling out my laptop, "we need to protect what's left of your college fund. I have a friend who's a financial lawyer. She can help us set up a trust that Linda can't touch." Ethan's phone chimed, "Linda," asking where he was. His hands shook slightly as he typed a reply about studying at the library. "She'll figure it out eventually," he said. "That we're working together. Let her." I was surprised by the steel in my own voice. I'm done letting her run away from what she's done. Just then, Rose called. "Avery, you need to come to the house. Now. Linda's here with some realtor, talking about selling the place. She's claiming she has power of attorney from when your grandfather was sick." My stomach dropped. The family home, where my father had grown up, where I'd spent my happiest years after Linda left. Of course she'd try to take that too. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said, already gathering my things. To Ethan, I added, "Want to see where I grew up?" He nodded, looking both scared and determined. As we headed to my car, another text came through, this time from Linda: "Whatever you think you're doing, stop. You have no idea what you're getting yourself into." I showed it to Ethan, who read it with a grimace. Classic mom. When she can't control something, she tries to scare it away. "Well, I'm not going anywhere," I said, starting the engine. "And this time, she's the one who should be scared." As we drove toward my grandmother's house, I glanced at Ethan. He was staring out the window, looking lost in thought. "Hey," I said softly. "We're going to fix this. All of it." He managed a small smile. "Yeah. Together." For the first time since finding my father's letter, I felt something beyond anger and betrayal. I had an ally now, someone else who understood exactly what we were dealing with. And maybe, just maybe, that would make all the difference. The realtor was already gone by the time Ethan and I reached my grandmother's house, but the damage was done. Rose sat at the kitchen table, her normally steady hands shaking as she held a stack of papers. "She forged my signature," Rose said quietly. "On documents giving her control of the house. Henry's house." I felt Ethan stiffen beside me. "That's not possible," he said. "Mom wouldn't." But his voice trailed off as Rose spread the papers across the table. There it was, Rose's signature, perfectly mimicked on power of attorney documents dated just weeks after my grandfather's death. "She must have been planning this for months," I said, studying the paperwork. "Even before she got engaged to Ryan." My phone buzzed again, Ryan's third attempt to meet. "This time," I replied, "dinner tonight. Bring whatever documents you have about the wedding venue deposits." "What are you thinking?" Rose asked, watching me carefully. I'm thinking it's time we talk to the police." The words felt heavy, final. This isn't just about the trust fund anymore. This is fraud. Ethan's face went pale. "You mean? Like jail?" Before I could respond, the front door opened. Linda swept in, wearing the same confident smile she'd had at the Four Seasons, but something was different. There was an edge to her movements, a barely contained desperation in her eyes. "Family meeting? How sweet." She looked at Ethan. "Sweetheart, go wait in the car." "No," he said, and I heard our father's steel in his voice. "I'm staying." Linda's smile flickered. "Fine. Then let me make this simple. I'm selling this house. The market's hot, and it's the practical thing to do. Rose doesn't need all this space anymore." "You mean you need the money?" I cut in. "For what, Mom? Your escape plan?" "Don't be dramatic, Avery. I'm simply planning to run." Rose's quiet voice cut through Linda's explanation like a knife. "Just like you did when Michael died?" Linda's facade cracked slightly. "I did what I had to do. I was suffocating in this town, in this life. And now..." She gestured around the kitchen. "Now you're all trying to suffocate me again. By asking for the truth?" I stepped closer. "By expecting you to face what you've done? You have no idea what it's like," she hissed. "To get older, to become invisible. Ryan is my chance to start over, to be someone new. Someone who steals from her children?" Ethan's voice cracked. "Who forges documents and lies?" Linda turned to him, reaching out, but he stepped back. Something flashed across her face, pain, fear, or maybe both. "I've secured the venue," she said, her voice tight. "Paid the deposits. The wedding is happening in 3 weeks, and then you'll disappear with whatever money you can grab," I finished. "Including what you get from selling this house." She didn't deny it. Instead, she pulled out her phone, showing us a screen full of text messages. "Ryan's family has been asking questions. About my past, about you, Avery. About why my own daughter won't be my maid of honor." Her smile turned cruel. "If this wedding falls apart, if Ryan leaves me, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly why. Including what really happened the night your father died." The room went silent. Rose gasped softly. "What are you talking about?" I asked, but my throat had gone dry. "Ask your grandmother," Linda said, heading for the door. "Ask her why she and Henry really took you in that night. Why they were so eager to keep you away from me." After she left, I turned to Rose, whose face had gone ashen. "Grandma? There are things." She started, then stopped, pressing her hands flat against the table. "Things about that night that we never told you. That your father made us promise never to tell." Ethan moved closer to me, and I felt his hands slip into mine, squeezing gently. Whatever was coming, whatever truth Linda was threatening to expose, we'd face it together. But looking at Rose's face, I wasn't sure I was ready for what I was about to learn. Rose's hands trembled as she pulled a dusty photo album from the top shelf of her closet. Ethan had gone home, leaving us alone with the weight of Linda's threat hanging in the air. "Your father wasn't just protecting you from Linda's instability," Rose said, opening the album to reveal photos I'd never seen before. "He was protecting you from the truth about that night." The first photo showed my parents at their wedding, young, beautiful, hopeful. The next showed them arguing outside our old house, my father's face twisted with anger I'd never seen before. "Linda was having an affair," Rose continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "With your father's business partner. The night Michael died, he discovered they'd been embezzling from the company for months." My stomach lurched. "What?" "He confronted them at the office. There was a fight." Rose's voice cracked. "The police ruled it an accident, Michael's fall down the stairs. But Linda and James were there. They were the only ones who knew what really happened. The room started spinning. I gripped the edge of the bed, trying to steady myself. Are you saying she was involved in Dad's death? Nothing was ever proven. James left town the next day, and Linda. Rose closed the album. Linda took what money she could and ran. We fought for custody because we knew something wasn't right. My phone buzzed, a text from Ryan, meeting cancelled. Linda explained everything. I'm sorry, but I think it's best if you stay away from the wedding. Of course she'd gotten to him first. I showed Rose the message. She's trying to isolate you, Rose said. Just like she did back then. Making everyone doubt the truth. I stood up, pacing the room. So what do I do? If I push harder, she'll spin this story her way. Make it look like I'm the crazy one, trying to ruin her perfect new life. There might be a way, Rose said, pulling out another envelope. Your grandfather. He kept investigating, even after the police closed the case. He hired a private investigator. Inside were surveillance photos, bank statements, and a handwritten statement from James's secretary about what she'd overheard that night. Henry was waiting for the right time, Rose explained. He wanted to protect you until you were old enough to handle the truth. My hands shook as I read through the documents. Does Ethan know any of this? No one does. Except Linda. Rose touched my arm. Avery, if you use this information, there's no going back. It won't just expose the theft, it could reopen the investigation into Michael's death. I thought about Linda's threat, about her plans to sell our family home, about Ethan's college fund slowly disappearing. About my father, who died trying to protect his company and his daughter's future. My phone buzzed again. Ethan, Mom's acting weird. She's packing things up, talking about moving the wedding up. What's going on? She's planning to run again, I said, more to myself than Rose. Before everything falls apart. Rose watched me carefully. What are you going to do? I looked at the evidence in my hands, proof of not just financial fraud, but possibly something much darker. The truth could destroy Linda's new life, protect Ethan's future, and maybe finally bring justice for my father. But it could also tear apart what was left of our family. I need to talk to Ethan first, I said finally. He deserves to know what kind of person his mother really is before I do this. And then? I gathered the documents, my decision crystallizing. Then I'm going to give Linda a choice. She can come clean about everything, the money, the fraud, what really happened that night, or I'll do it for her. As I headed for the door, Rose called after me. Avery. Your father wanted to protect you from this truth. Are you sure you're ready to live with the consequences of exposing it? I thought about my father's letter, about his dreams for my future, about the years of lies that had followed his death. I'm not the one who needs protection anymore, I said. And neither is Ethan. The truth about that night had waited long enough. It was time for everyone to face it, especially Linda. The wedding rehearsal dinner was in full swing when I walked into the Four Seasons ballroom, grandfather's evidence folder tucked under my arm. Ethan stood by the entrance, looking pale but determined in his new suit. Mom's been drinking since 4, he whispered. Ryan's parents keep asking why you weren't at the rehearsal. I scanned the room. Linda sat at the head table, glass of champagne in hand, that perfect smile plastered on her face. Ryan stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder. Completely unaware that his fiancée was planning to disappear with whatever money she could grab before the actual wedding. You don't have to be here for this, I told Ethan. He squared his shoulders. Yes, I do. I made my way toward the head table, but Linda saw me coming. She was up and moving before I got halfway there, intercepting me near the dessert table. I warned you to stay away, she hissed, still somehow maintaining her smile for the guests nearby. Did you warn James to stay away too? I kept my voice low, watching her face. The night Dad died? The champagne glass trembled slightly in her hand. You don't know what you're talking about. Actually, I do. I pulled out the first photo, Linda and James leaving the office building the night of my father's death. Grandfather had quite a file on you too. The affair, the embezzlement, the mysterious accident. Keep your voice down, she grabbed my arm, nails digging in. Why? Afraid Ryan might hear about your past? Or his parents? I pulled away. Or maybe you're afraid the police might want to reopen Dad's case? Something dark flashed across her face. You want to play this game? Fine. She turned toward the room, raising her voice. Everyone. My daughter has something she'd like to share. The room fell silent. Ryan appeared at Linda's side, looking confused. Ethan moved closer to me, and I felt his hand slip into mine. Go ahead, sweetie, Linda's voice dripped with false concern. Tell everyone how you've been threatening me, trying to extort money with wild accusations. How you've been jealous of my happiness, desperate for attention. That's not, I started, but she cut me off. It's been so hard, watching her struggle with these delusions, Linda continued, tears welling up perfectly in her eyes. First the lies about her college fund, now these horrible stories about her father's death. Ryan wrapped an arm around her shoulders. I think you should leave, he told me, his face hard. Show them the evidence, Ethan whispered, but my hands were shaking too badly to open the folder. Linda seized the moment. See? More invented documents, more desperate attempts to ruin my special day. She turned to Ryan's parents. I'm so sorry you have to witness this. She's been this way since her father died, making up stories, blaming me. The room was spinning. Faces turned away from me, whispers started. I saw pity in some eyes, disgust in others. Linda had played it perfectly, the concerned mother, the victim of her troubled daughter's delusions. Tell them about James, I said desperately. About the money you stole, about what really happened that night. Security, Ryan called out. Please escort her out. As two men in dark suits approached, Linda leaned close to me. I warned you, she whispered. You're just like your father, so sure of yourself, so righteous. Look where that got him. The admission hit me like a physical blow. But before I could react, the security guards had my arms. Wait, Ethan stepped forward. I have proof too. Mom's been stealing from my college fund, I have the bank statements. Ethan, honey, Linda's voice turned sickeningly sweet. We talked about this. Those were necessary investments for your future. You're just confused, letting your sister fill your head with lies. I watched helplessly as she pulled Ethan away from me, watched his face crumple as she whispered something in his ear. The security guards were already moving me toward the door. The police will be very interested in these harassment claims, Ryan called after me. Stay away from Linda, or we'll press charges. The last thing I saw before the doors closed was Linda's triumphant smile, and Ethan's defeated expression as she led him back to the table. She'd won. Again. Just like she had the night my father died. I was halfway home from the rehearsal dinner when Ethan's text came through, Mom's at the house. She's taking everything. I hit the brakes, pulling an illegal U-turn. Rose's house, my childhood home, was only 10 minutes away. Linda couldn't have gotten there much before me, not with all those wedding guests to placate. The moving truck in the driveway proved me wrong. Rose stood on the front porch, blocking the door while two movers carried out boxes. Linda supervised from the lawn, still in her rehearsal dinner dress, phone pressed to her ear. You can't stop this, she called out as I slammed my car door. The power of attorney is legal. I'm well within my rights. To steal from another child? I held up my phone, showing her the screen. I just got off the phone with James Morrison. Remember him? Your old partner? Linda froze. The phone slipped from her hand. Turns out he's been wanting to clear his conscience, I continued, walking closer. Especially after I sent him grandfather's evidence file. He's talking to the police right now. You're bluffing. But her voice shook. Mom. Ethan's voice cut through the tension as he ran up the driveway. The realtor just called Ryan. She told him everything about the house sale. He's on his way. Linda's composure cracked. Stop the loading, she shouted at the movers. Now. Why? I asked, letting the anger I'd held back for years surface. Afraid Ryan might learn the truth? About the money? About Dad? You don't understand, she hissed, grabbing my arm. I had to get out. Your father was going to ruin everything, expose everything. James and we didn't mean for him to fall. The confession hung in the air. Rose gasped. Ethan stopped mid-stride. Say that again, came Ryan's voice from behind us. Linda spun around. Her fiancé stood at the end of the driveway, his face ashen. Behind him, a police car pulled up, lights flashing. Ryan, please, Linda's voice turned sugary sweet. It's not what you think. I heard everything, Linda. He held up his phone. The realtor sent me recordings of your conversations about selling this house. Then I get here and hear you confess to. What exactly? It was an accident, she whispered, but her eyes darted toward her car. We just wanted him to listen, to understand. Mrs. Callahan? One of the officers approached. We need to ask you some questions about the death of Michael Callahan. I watched my mother's perfect facade finally shatter completely. Her shoulders slumped, the years of lies and manipulation catching up all at once. You did this, she said, turning to me. Your father would be ashamed. No, Rose's firm voice cut through. Michael would be proud. Proud that his daughter finally exposed the truth. Proud that she protected not just his legacy, but her brother too. Linda looked at Ethan, reaching for him one last time, but he stepped back, moving closer to me. Miss Callahan, the officer said, we'll need to see those documents you mentioned. As I handed over the evidence file, Linda's shoulders straightened. The mask slipped back on, though now we could all see through it. You think this makes you better than me? She asked as the officers led her toward their car. You think the truth sets you free? Wait until you're older, until life starts slipping away. Then you'll understand why I did everything I did. I watched them drive away, Ryan's car following close behind. The moving truck pulled out empty, leaving boxes scattered across the lawn like the pieces of our broken family. What happens now? Ethan asked quietly. I looked at the house, really looked at it. The place where my father had lived and died, where my grandparents had raised me, where the truth had finally come to light. Now, I said, putting an arm around my brother's shoulders, we start over. The right way. Rose joined us, her hand warm on my back. Together, she added. For the first time since finding my father's letter, I felt the weight of the past lifting. The truth hadn't set us free exactly, but it had given us something better, a chance to build something new from the ashes of Linda's lies. 6 months after Linda's arrest, I stood in the visiting room of the county jail, watching my mother age in real time behind the bulletproof glass. The designer clothes and perfect makeup were gone, replaced by a prison jumpsuit and dark roots showing in her graying hair. James took a plea deal, she said, her voice thin through the speaker. 20 years for his role in your father's death. They're offering me 15 if I confess. I didn't respond. I wasn't there for updates on her case. Why did you come, Avery? She pressed her hand against the glass. To see how far I've fallen? I came because Ethan asked me to. I pulled out the college acceptance letter he'd received yesterday. He got into Stanford. Full scholarship. Something flickered across her face, pride, regret, or maybe just resignation. He always was smart. Like his sister. The detective found Dad's original will, I continued, watching her carefully. The trust fund wasn't just for college. He left enough for both of us to start our own businesses, to chase our dreams without fear. Linda's hand dropped from the glass. I was afraid too, you know. Of getting older, of becoming invisible. Your father. He always knew exactly who he was, what he wanted. I never had that certainty. So you took it from us instead. She flinched. I told myself I deserved it. That I'd earned it after years of being Michael Callahan's wife, of living in his shadow. She laughed bitterly. Now look at me. I'll be almost 70 when I get out. That's not why I'm here either. I pulled out one final document, the deed to the family home. Rose is signing it over to me and Ethan. We're going to restore it, make it a home again. Why are you telling me this? Because Dad would have wanted you to know. He believed in second chances, in doing the right thing even when it's hard. I stood up. That's what I'm trying to do now. By forgiving me? Her voice cracked. No. By letting go of the need for revenge. By building something new instead of destroying what's left. As I turned to leave, she called out. Wait. There's something you should know. About the night your father died. She pressed closer to the glass. He tried to help us, even after discovering what we'd done. Said we could find a way to make it right. That's who your father really was. I nodded slowly. I know. That's why I'm here. Outside, Ethan waited in my car, papers spread across his lap, college housing forms, scholarship documents. Dreams our father had wanted for both of us. How was she? He asked as I slid into the driver's seat. Different. Smaller somehow. I started the engine. Ready to go home? He gathered his papers, smiling. Yeah. Rose said she's making pot roast. Dad's recipe. We drove in comfortable silence until Ethan spoke again. You know what's weird? I always thought Mom was so strong, so sure of everything. But you're the strong one. You faced the truth even when it hurt. We both did, I reminded him. At home, Rose was waiting on the porch, surrounded by paint swatches for the house's renovation. The afternoon sun caught the silver in her hair, reminding me of all the years she'd spent holding our family together. Later that night, I found myself in my father's old study, now slowly being transformed into a home office where I'd run my new marketing consultancy. On the wall hung his old business degree next to my new one, paid for with my own money, earned my own way. I opened his letter one last time, the paper now soft from repeated handling. But instead of anger or pain, I felt something different, peace. Not because justice had been served, but because I'd finally understood what Dad had tried to teach me all along. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in destroying what hurt you, but in building something beautiful from the wreckage it left behind. On my desk sat a framed photo, me, Ethan, and Rose on the porch, paint-stained and laughing as we worked on the house. Next to it lay the business plan for my new company, its mission statement simple but clear, building futures, one dream at a time. Just like my father would have wanted.